Welcome back to another exciting episode of Cyber Defense TV. I'm your host, Gary Malevsky, and the publisher of Cyber Defense Magazine. Sitting in my hot seat today is a very special guest from a cool company and from a really cool location. It's Alex Pei. He's the Senior Vice President of Product, and guess what? He's from SaltStack in Salt Lake City, Utah.
That's right. Thanks for having us, Gary.
Cool place, cool company, security automation. Tell us how you do it and how you're innovating.
Yeah, so one of the things that we focus at SaltStack is being able to take action. We spent a lot of time looking at the security market. We see a lot of vendors that are out there that take the word remediation and they give you a report. From the SaltStack's perspective, we believe that the security automation needs to end in an action. It's not enough just to find a problem. It's not enough to find a vulnerability, but you need to be able to do something about that vulnerability.
So hold on. Do I have an endpoint agent to activate some action to deal with the vulnerability? Because how do I, patch SMB1 and Windows Server at, nih.gov.uk, for example?
So with SaltStack, we actually give you a variety of choices. You can have an agent that runs on the machine. You can have an agentless option that goes in through NRM or SSH, or we can provide a proxy option.
Acronyms alert. What are the acronyms you just used?
So our agentless model just uses a way to communicate remotely into the machine.
And what's that called?
You can use SSH or a Windows version of that.
Secure Shell. Or the Windows version. Did you say RDP or something?
WinRM.
WinRM. What does WinRM mean? Windows Remote Management?
Yeah.
I'm learning a new acronym every day. I love it.
Good.
Now, is WinRM risky or is it using a secure methodology?
Well, from our perspective, it depends on the use case that you need to work with. So like I said, we've got the flexibility of doing agents or agent-based. Each one of them has their benefits and their drawbacks. But depending on the use case and the customer, we give them the opportunity to choose one or the other.
Okay, so let's say I'm deploying SaltStack and I'm a big bank.
Yeah.
And I've got 100 branches and I've got 10,000 endpoints and they're all different. Windows and Unix and Linux and maybe even BSD. I don't know. I got a crazy mess of stuff. I got some ATM machines running Windows XP. Can you handle that scenario?
Yes, we can. And one of the things that's really interesting about SaltStack is we start out in the operations side. Start out as open source in 2011. And so our heritage is actually in being able to work with all those different operating systems. It's one of the things that makes us different. Regardless of scale, regardless of what types of devices you're working with, SaltStack's been doing that for years, and we're ready to take action on any operating system, machine, also edge devices and network devices.
How many years?
So since 2011, so 9 years.
9 years. You are ahead of all these SOAR players who are claiming some alerting and some remediation with reports. You're saying we've automated across all platforms.
That's right. And one of the things that we think is really interesting is we look at those SOAR players that have been coming out the last few years. They never go to that action point. Instead, they're more like the glue that pulls the orchestration together. But they always stop short and then ask somebody else to take action. With SaltStack, we like to be that integrated action arm that goes to the final step and provides the value to the user.
What if I have to unwind an action? Can you help me do that too if the action caused an issue because I got some old software that just went unhappy?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways to approach that. Some of those just come down to being able to take a snapshot if you know that it's going to completely change the system itself. Other things are putting the right stopgaps in place so that you don't do something that you don't expect to have happen in the end.
Is the name SaltStack because of Salt Lake City, Utah?
That's always a good question that we get. Actually, it's not. Our founder always laughed that he went with salt because he believes everything you put salt on it just makes it better.
I agree 100%. Salt tastes great.
That's right.
If you don't have salt, it's just bland. So you guys are the great tasting security automation. On that note, how quickly can I deploy in this large bank organization? And how quickly can I deploy in maybe a credit union with one office?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the complexity of your environment. But normally we see the deployments being able to take place in the kind of smaller end within a matter of days, an afternoon per se, if you're looking at a single branch, to a couple of months depending on if you're looking at that 10,000 or 100,000 node deployment in one of the larger financial institutions.
So what does it cost? I mean, is it something that even a retailer can afford or an SMB? I mean, can anybody afford SaltStack, or is it really aimed for the enterprise?
So SaltStack's definitely aimed for the enterprise in the sense that we're able to scale better than really any other solution that's out there. But a lot of our customers are also SMBs, and so it's basically based off of the consumption. So depending on the number of nodes, we'll determine the overall price. And so we've got a number of SMBs that have been coming into the market and been using SaltStack to get kind of their foothold. One of the things that we find is on the enterprise side, it's normally about bringing together a security and operations team that are trying to work together to a common goal. On the SMBs, on the small and medium businesses, it's a little bit different problem in the sense that you've got one person that's trying to wear multiple hats, and so they really want a single tool that lets them find and then remediate the problems.
Do you have a single pane of glass across the organization, or and rolling up data from branch or remote offices? And how do you collect that? Is it in the cloud? Are we using VLANs or MPLS? Like, how are we collecting and pulling all that security automation into one place, if possible? Is it possible?
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal, is to have that single pane of glass across the entire organization. And so SaltStack is an on-premise product. We can deploy into one of your cloud of choice, but it is on-premise, and so that data comes back to what we call our SaltStack Enterprise Server. We pull that information into a database, and then we're able to aggregate that data and provide reports.
How quickly can SaltStack remediate issues that it discovered across the organization?
It's an interesting question, because when we first came to market, we were pushing this notion of almost immediate remediation. And we found that the customers were normally the ones that were putting the brakes on that. They wanted to push into an ITSM, have some type of audit trail, a human to interject into that model. From a SaltStack standpoint, we can identify an event that happens on a system. We call that our beacon. It pushes an event back to our reactors, and we can almost instantaneously respond to that. And of course, it takes however long the machine takes to remediate. But what we've found is most companies want to slow that process down because they're not quite as comfortable with that automation as the technology allows us to be.
And you've been doing this for 9 years?
Yeah.
So in 9 years, you're not a 1.0 release, you're a 9.0 release, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of intel on how to do this right.
That's correct.
I've met a lot of players who talk about it, but it sounds to me like you've actually deployed it in really tough environments. Are there any examples that you'd want to give, critical infrastructure or a bank or a hospital, any examples that you could share? You don't have to name the vendor, where they just found it almost immediate, even though they have politics, they got to slow down the deployment.
Yeah, so one of the things that's interesting with SaltStack is because we've been around for so long, scale is one of the things we're recognized for. So you can go out to a number of analysts that will talk about SaltStack scalability. And what we've seen is because of that, we're able to go into some of the most complex environments, which includes some cloud vendors where we can go in and help manage and maintain their network device infrastructure.
Boy, can I name some cloud vendors for you off air. There's too many right now.
That's right. And
security is an afterthought sometimes. It's more about scalability, not security.
Yeah, and it's kind of a slippery slope, if you will. But you can come to our website and see a number of case studies that explain not just kind of the notion of what we're able to do, but also the vendors that are using us.
Is it saltstack.io? Is it saltstack.com? What's the URL?
It's saltstack.com.
That's great. You got the .com.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else you want to share with our viewers, readers, and listeners?
The only thing that I'd mention is that the website also provides an opportunity to come in and trial the software. You can come in and we'll provide a hosted version of this. One click and you'll be able to get access, try some of the common use cases, understand how our software works, and be able to see how that value would make its way into your organization.
Sounds great. So we have made it through the hot seat. It's a drop the mic moment, but don't drop it.
Okay.
I need our viewers, listeners, and readers to go to saltstack.com and deploy something one click quickly to do security automation better than you've ever done before. And it's all about time-based security. You don't have a lot of time, and they've sped it up to nearly instantaneous. Pretty great. Really interested. Can't wait to deploy. And then you will come back to Cyber Defense TV for more interviews like this. See you next time.